Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's time for Krishna book. This is the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, translated and presented in storybook form by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And this is part 2 of chapter 33, the Deliverance of Lord Shiva. It's volume 2 of Krishna book, chapter 33. And it was kind of a long chapter, so we split it in half, and this is part 2. Sukadeva Goswami continued. The demigods headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, including Lord Indra, Chandra, Varuna, and others, are apt to become very quickly satisfied and very quickly angered by the good and evil behavior of their devotees. But this is not so with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. This means that any living entity within this material world, including the demigods, is conducted by the 3 modes of material nature, and therefore the qualities of ignorance and passion are very prominent within the material world. Those devotees who take blessings from the demigods are also infected with the material qualities, especially passion and ignorance. Lord Sri Krishna has therefore stated in the Bhagavad-gītā that to take blessings from the demigods is less intelligent, because when one takes benedictions from the demigods, the results of such benedictions are temporary. It's easy to get material opulence by worshipping the demigods, but the result is sometimes disastrous. As such, the benedictions derived from demigods are appreciated by the less intelligent class of men. Persons who derive benedictions from the demigods gradually become puffed up with material opulence and neglect their benefactors. Sukadeva Goswami addressed King Parikshit thus: My dear King, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, the principal trio of the material creation, are able to bless or curse anyone. Of this trio, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva become very easily satisfied, and at the same time they become very easily angered. When they're satisfied, they give benedictions without any consideration, and when they're angry, they curse the devotee without any consideration. But Lord Vishnu is not like that. Lord Vishnu is very considerate. Whenever a devotee wants something from Lord Vishnu first of all considers whether such a benediction will ultimately be good for the devotee. Lord Vishnu never bestows any benediction which will ultimately prove disastrous to the devotee. He is, by his transcendental nature, always merciful. Therefore, before giving any benediction, he considers whether it will prove beneficial for the devotee. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always merciful, even when it appears that he has killed a demon, or even when he apparently becomes angry toward a devotee, his actions are always auspicious. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore known as all good. Whatever he does is good. As for the benedictions given by demigods like Lord Shiva, there is the following historical incident cited by great sages. Once, Lord Shiva, after giving benediction to a demon named Vrikashura, the son of Sakuni, was himself trapped in a very dangerous position. Vrikashura was searching after a benediction and was trying to decide which of the 3 presiding deities to worship in order to get it. In the meantime, he happened to meet the great sage Narada, consulted with him as to whom he should approach to achieve quick results from his austerity. He inquired, Of the 3 deities, namely Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, who's the most quickly satisfied? Narada could understand the plan of the demon, and he advised him, "You'd better worship Lord Shiva, then you'll quickly get the desired result." Lord Shiva is very quickly satisfied, and very quickly dissatisfied also, so try to satisfy Lord Shiva. Narada also cited instances where demons like Ravana and Banashura were enriched with great opulences simply by satisfying Lord Shiva with prayers. Because the great sage Narada was aware of the nature of the demon Vrikashura, he did not advise him to approach Vishnu or Lord Brahma. Persons such as Vrikashura, who are situated in the material mode of ignorance, cannot stick to the worship of Vishnu. After receiving instructions from Narada, the demon Vrikashura went to Kedaranath. The pilgrimage site of Kedaranath still exists near Kashmir. It's almost always covered by snow, but for part of the year, during the month of July, it's possible to see the deity. Devotees go there to offer their respects. Kedaranath is for devotees of Lord Shiva. According to the Vedic principle, when something's offered to the deities to eat, it's offered in a fire. Therefore, fire sacrifice is necessary in all sorts of ceremonies. It is specifically stated in the Shastras that gods are to be offered something to eat through the fire. The demon Vrikashura therefore went to Kedaranath and ignited a sacrificial fire to please Lord Shiva. After igniting the fire in the name of Shiva, he began to offer his own flesh by cutting it from his body so as to please Lord Shiva. Here is an instance of worship in the mode of ignorance. In the Bhagavad-gītā, different types of sacrifices are mentioned. Some sacrifices are in the mode of goodness, some are in the mode of passion, and some are in the mode of ignorance. There are different kinds of tapasya and worship because there are different kinds of people within this world. The ultimate tapasya, Krishna consciousness, is the topmost yoga and the topmost sacrifice. As confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā, the topmost yoga is to always think of Krishna within the heart, and the topmost sacrifice is to perform the Sankirtan Yagna. In the Bhagavad-gītā, it's stated that the worshippers of the demigods have lost their intelligence. As will be revealed later in this chapter, Vrikashura wanted to satisfy Lord Shiva for a third-class materialistic objective which was temporary and without real benefit. The Asuras, or persons within the mode of ignorance, will accept such benedictions from the demigods. In complete contrast to the sacrifice in the modes of ignorance, the Archana Vidhi process for worshipping Lord Vishnu or Krishna is very simple. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-gītā that he accepts from his devotees even a little fruit, a flower, or some water, which will be gathered by any person, poor or rich. Of course, those who are rich are not expected to offer only a little water, a little piece of fruit, or a little leaf to the Lord. A rich man should offer according to his position. But if the devotee happens to be a very poor man, the Lord will accept even the most meager offering. The worship of Lord Vishnu or Krishna is very simple. It can be executed by anyone in this world. But worship in the mode of ignorance, as exhibited by Vrikashura, is not only very difficult and painful, it's a useless waste of time. Therefore, Bhagavad-gītā says that the worshippers of the demigods are bereft of intelligence. Their process of worship is very difficult, and at the same time the result obtained is flickering and temporary. Although Vrikashura continued his sacrifice for 6 days, he was nevertheless unable to personally see Lord Shiva, which was his objective. He wanted to see him face to face and ask him for a benediction. Here's another contrast between a demon and a devotee. A devotee is confident that whatever he offers to the deity in full devotional service is accepted by the Lord. But a demon wants to see his worshipful deity face to face so he can directly take a benediction. The devotee, however, does not worship Vishnu or Lord Krishna for any benediction. Therefore, a devotee is called akama, free of desire, and a non-devotee is called sarvakarma, or desirous of everything. On the 7th day, the demon Vrikashura decided he should cut off his head and offer it to satisfy Lord Shiva. Thus he took a bath in a nearby lake. Without drying his body and hair, he prepared to cut off his head. According to the Vedic system, an animal which is to be offered as a sacrifice has to be bathed first. While the animal is wet, he is sacrificed. When the demon was thus preparing to cut off his head, Lord Shiva became very compassionate. This compassion, however, is a symptom of the quality of goodness. Lord Shiva is called Trilinga, therefore his manifestation of the nature of compassion is a sign of the quality of goodness. This compassion, however, is present in every living entity, and the compassion of Lord Shiva was aroused because the demon was offering his flesh to the sacrificial fire. This is natural compassion. Even a common man sees someone preparing to commit suicide. It's his duty to try to save him. He does so automatically. There's no need to appeal to him. Therefore, when Lord Shiva appeared from the fire to check the demon from suicide, it was not as a great favor to him. The demon was saved from committing suicide by the touch of Lord Shiva. His bodily injuries immediately healed. His body became as it was before. And Lord Shiva told the demon, "My dear Vrikashura, you do not need to cut off your head. You can ask from me a benediction you like. I shall try to fulfill your desire. I do not know why you wanted to cut off your head to satisfy me. I become satisfied even by an offering of a little water." Actually, according to Vedic process, the Shiva Linga in the temple, or the form of Lord Shiva in the temple, is worshipped simply by offering Ganges water, because it's said that Lord Shiva is greatly satisfied when Ganges water is poured over his head. Generally, devotees offer Ganges water and the leaves of the Bilva tree, which are especially meant for offering to Lord Shiva and the goddess Durga. The fruit of this tree also is offered to Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva assured Vrikashura that he becomes satisfied by a very simple process of worship. Why then was he so anxious to cut off his head? Why was he taking so much pain by cutting his body to pieces and offering it in the fire? There was no need of such severe penances. Anyway, out of compassion and sympathy, Lord Shiva prepared to give him any benediction he liked. When the demon was offered this facility by Lord Shiva, he asked for a very fearful and abominable benediction. The demon was very sinful, and sinful persons do not know what sort of benediction should be asked from the deity. Therefore he asked Lord Shiva to be benedicted with such power that as soon as he would touch anyone's head, it would immediately crack and the man would die. The demons are described in Bhagavad-gītā as duskritinas, or miscreants. Kriti means very meritorious, but when dus is asked, it means abominable. Instead of surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the duskritinas worship different demigods in order to derive abominable material benefits. Sometimes such demons as material scientists discover lethal weapons. They cannot show their meritorious power by discovering something which can save man from death, but instead they discover weapons which accelerate the process of death. Because Lord Shiva is powerful enough to give any benediction, the demon could have asked of him something beneficial for human society. But for his personal interest, he asked that anyone whose head he be touched by his hand would die at once. Lord Shiva could understand the motive of the demon, and he was very sorry that he had assured him whatever benediction he liked. He could not withdraw his promise, but he was very sorry in his heart that he was to offer him a benediction so dangerous to human society. The demons are described as duskritinas, miscreants, because although they have brain power and merit, the merit and brain power are used for abominable activities. Sometimes, for example, materialistic demons discover a lethal weapon. The scientific search for such a discovery certainly requires a very good brain. But instead of discovering something beneficial to human society, they discover something to accelerate the death, which is already assured to every man. Similarly, Vrikashura, instead of asking Lord Shiva for something beneficial to human society, asked for something very dangerous to human society. Therefore Lord Shiva felt very sorry within himself. Devotees of the Personality of Godhead, however, never ask any benediction from Lord Vishnu or Krishna, and even if they ask something from the Lord, it is not at all dangerous for human society. That's the difference between the demons and the devotees, or the worshippers of Lord Shiva and the worshippers of Lord Vishnu. While Sukadeva Goswami was narrating the history of Vrikashura, he addressed Maharaj Parikshit as Bharata, referring to King Parikshit's birth in a family of devotees. Maharaj Parikshit was saved by Lord Krishna while he was in his mother's womb. Similarly, he could have asked Lord Krishna to save him from the curse of the Brahmin, but he did not do so. The demon, however, wanted to become immortal by killing everyone with the touch of his hand. Lord Shiva could understand this, but because he promised, he gave him the benediction. The demon, however, being very sinful, immediately decided that he would use the benediction to kill Lord Shiva and take away Parvati for his personal enjoyment. He immediately decided to place his hand on the head of Lord Shiva. Thus, Lord Shiva was put into an awkward position because he was endangered by his own benediction to a demon. This is also another instance of a materialistic devotees misusing power derived from the demigods. Without further deliberation, the demon Vrikashura immediately approached Lord Shiva to place his hand on Lord Shiva's head. Lord Shiva was so afraid of him that his body trembled. He began to flee from the land to the sky, from the sky to other planets, until he reached the limits of the universe above the higher planetary systems. Lord Shiva fled from one place to another, but the demon Vrikashura continued to chase him. The predominating deities of other planets, such as Brahma, Indra, and Chandra, could not find any way to save Lord Shiva from the impending danger. Wherever Lord Shiva went, they remained silent. At last, Lord Shiva approached Lord Vishnu, who is situated within this universe on the planet known as Svetadweep. Svetadweep is the local Vaikuntha planet beyond the jurisdiction of the influence of external energy. Lord Vishnu, in his all-pervasive feature, remains everywhere, but wherever he remains personally is the Vaikuntha atmosphere. In the Bhagavad-gītā it is stated that the Lord remains within the heart of all living entities. As such, the Lord remains within the heart of many low-born living entities, but that does not mean that he is low-born. Wherever he remains is transformed into Vaikuntha Loka, or Vaikuntha. So the planet within this universe known as Svetadweep is also Vaikuntha Loka. It is said in the Shastras that residential quarters within the forest are in the mode of goodness. Residential quarters in big cities, towns, and villages are in the mode of passion, and residential quarters in an atmosphere where indulgence in the four sinful activities of illicit sex, intoxication, meat-eating, and gambling predominate are in the mode of ignorance. But residential quarters in a temple of Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, are in Vaikuntha. It doesn't matter where the temple is situated, but the temple itself, wherever it may be, is Vaikuntha. Similarly, the Svetadweep planet, although within the material jurisdiction, is Vaikuntha. Lord Shiva finally entered Svetadweep Vaikuntha. In Svetadweep there are great saintly persons who are completely freed from the envious nature of the material world and are beyond the jurisdiction of the four principles of material activities, namely religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Anyone who enters into that Vaikuntha planet never comes back again to this material world. Lord Narayan is celebrated as a lover of his devotees, and as soon as he understood that Lord Shiva was in great danger, he appeared as a brahmachari and personally approached Lord Shiva to receive him from a distant place. The Lord appeared as a perfect brahmachari with a belt around his waist, a sacred thread, deerskin, a brahmachari stick, and rudra beads. Rudra beads are different from tulsi beads. Rudra beads are used by devotees of Lord Shiva. Dressed as a brahmachari, Lord Narayan stood before Lord Shiva. The shining effulgence emanating from his body attracted not only Shiva, Lord Shiva, but also the demon Vrikashura. Lord Narayan offered his respects and obeisances unto Vrikashura, just to attract his sympathy and attention. Thus, checking the demon, the Lord addressed him as follows: "My dear son of Sakuni, you appear to be very tired, as if coming from a very distant place. What is your purpose? Why have you come so far? I see that you're very tired and fatigued, so I request you take a little rest. You should not unnecessarily tire your body. Everyone greatly values his body, because with this body only can one fulfill all the desires of one's mind. We should not, therefore, unnecessarily give trouble to this body." The brahmachari addressed Vrikashura as the son of Sakuni, to convince him that he was known to his father, Sakuni. Vrikashura then took the brahmachari to be someone known to his family. Therefore, the brahmachari's sympathetic words appealed to him. Before the demon could argue that he had no time to take rest, the Lord began to inform him about the importance of the body, and the demon was convinced. Any man, especially a demon, takes his body to be very important. Thus Vrikashura became convinced about the importance of his body. Then, just to pacify the demon, the brahmachari told him, "My dear Lord, if you think that you can disclose the mission for which you have taken the trouble to come here, maybe I shall be able to help you so that your purpose will be very easily served." Indirectly, the Lord informed him that because the Lord is the Supreme Brahman, certainly he would be able to adjust the awkward situation created by Lord Shiva. The demon was greatly pacified by the sweet words of Lord Narayan in the form of a brahmachari, and at last he disclosed all that had happened in regard to the benediction offered by Lord Shiva. The Lord replied to the demon as follows: "I myself cannot believe that Lord Shiva has in truth given you such a benediction. As far as I know, Lord Shiva is not in a sane mental condition. He had a quarrel with his father-in-law Daksha, and he's been cursed to become a pishaka, or a ghost. Thus he's become the leader of the ghosts and hobgoblins. Therefore I cannot put any faith in his words. But if you have faith still in the words of Lord Shiva, my dear king of the demons, then why don't you make an experiment by putting your hand on your head? If the benediction proves false, you can immediately kill this liar, Lord Shiva, so that in the future he will not dare to give out false benedictions." In this way, by Lord Narayan's sweet words and by the expansion of his superior illusion, the demon became bewildered. He actually forgot the power of Lord Shiva and his benediction. He was thus very easily persuaded to put his hand on his own head. As soon as the demon did that, his head cracked, as if struck by thunder, immediately died. The demigods from heaven began to shower flowers on Narayan, praising him with all glories and all thanksgiving. They offered their obeisances to the Lord. On the death of Vrikashura, all the denizens in the higher planetary systems, namely demigods, pitas, Gandharvas, inhabitants of Janaloka, began to shower flowers on the personality of Godhead. Thus, Lord Vishnu, in the form of a brahmachari, released Lord Shiva from the impending danger and saved the whole situation. Lord Narayan then informed Lord Shiva that this demon Vrikashura was killed as the result of his sinful activities. He was especially sinful and offensive because he wanted to experiment on his own master. Lord Narayan then told Lord Shiva, "My dear Lord, a person who commits an offense to great souls cannot continue to exist. He becomes vanquished by his own sinful activities, and this is certainly true of this demon who's committed such an offensive act against you." Thus, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, who is transcendental to all material qualities, Lord Shiva was saved from being killed by a demon. Anyone who hears this history with faith and devotion certainly becomes liberated from material entanglement, as well as from the clutches of his enemies. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second volume, 33rd chapter of Krishna, Deliverance of Lord Shiva.